Hi everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Stephanie Sandala, Programming and Outreach Specialist at LibraryLinkNJ. I'm so thrilled to have Heather Kristian from Pennsauken Public Library here to talk all about handicraft circles. So Heather has a nice presentation for you, and then we'll share our experience with any handicraft circles. As I said in the chat, like crochet, knit, anything we want to hear all about it. And Heather, feel free to take it away.
All right. Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for that nice introduction. My name is Heather Kristian. As Stephanie said, I'm the Youth Services Librarian at Pennsauken Free Public Library, and I run a handicraft circle at my library. And as I'm talking, should not be doing multiple things at once. I'm trying to share my screen as I am talking here. So this presentation this Skillshare, I keep saying presentation, I want to talk for a little bit, and then I definitely want to hear from everybody else. Thoughts, questions, comments. Stephanie, am I supposed to talk for a little bit and then we'll share, or should I ask people to sort of jump in if they have questions or put stuff in the chat?
Oh yeah. Feel free to talk for a bit, but questions anytime, please feel free to interrupt.
Oh yeah,
This is
please.
very,
Yes, do.
very informal.
Mhm.
So please ask us anything, share anything. You don't have to wait until the end. Feel free to
Okay,
just like shout it out or put it in the chat.
okay.
So,
All right, okay. All right, so this is basically just the session info, this first slide. Hopefully you were here for a Handicraft Circle for All Ages Skillshare. If not, you're in the wrong place. I don't know what to tell you, but I hope you stay anyway. So basically, who is this person talking to you? I'm a second generation librarian. Besides my MLIS, I also have an MFA in creative writing. I've worked in a number of different library settings. I volunteered in libraries. I read a lot. I audiobook a lot. I'm very involved in NJALA and NJLA, and do various things for LibraryLinkNJ when I get asked very kindly, like Stephanie asked me for this. And then outside library land, I'm a published poet. I volunteer with the Vegetarian Society of South Jersey. I'm an avid crocheter. I'm a very poor knitter, but I try. And I really like latch hook as well. And those are my two cats on screen. Marty's in the foreground there, and Wendy is in the background. They are of the same litter, but they're vastly different sizes. Okay, so what is a handicraft circle? The way that I define this, and it's not just my definition, is basically time and space dedicated to crafting with your hands. We spend so much time nowadays on screens. It's easy to sort of feel a bit disconnected from each other, and the idea of coming together and just sort of crafting with your hands in the same space. It's sort of an opportunity for people to be able to work on their projects in a social setting. And this is not a new concept. In the resources at the end of this, there's a really cool article I linked about the long history of knitting and social activism. And I just put a couple of examples here, like the Daughters of Liberty pre-American Revolution. They sort of created these spinning bees organized to support the boycott of British goods. And in the mid-1800s, knitting circles were a way for women to become more independent financially and get involved in various movements of the time. And then one more modern day example, the Yarn Mission was an activist fiber arts group that was created in response to police brutality in Ferguson as well. But there are many, many other examples throughout history. So getting together to knit, crochet, sew, anything handicraft is not a new idea by any stretch of the imagination. But you can say, I don't know how to crochet. I don't know how to knit. I can't sew. That is totally fine. Basically, you are offering the space for people to come and work on their projects. You could run a handicraft circle. That is more of a teaching thing. But I can tell you, I have done both in various settings, and teaching someone how to crochet or teaching a group of people how to crochet or knit or whatever is a very different experience than saying, this is an hour every month, we're going to come, bring your own project. So you have to decide what works for you. I really like this graphic. I was sent this by a friend who also crochets. I do not know who to attribute it to, but it is awesome. And if that's too small and you can't see it, if you're on your phone, it says everything I crocheted this week as a beginner. And it's basically just random pieces of yarn called things like a pickle or an asparagus. And I just thought that was very, very funny. So as I said, you are offering a space to craft. You're not necessarily teaching. So if that is something you're thinking, I kind of want to do this, but I don't know how to do this particular thing myself, that is okay. I do not know how to string pearls. I have a woman that comes twice a month and she brings her little box kit and she strings pearls. That's the only sort of handicraft thing, and it's her dedicated time to do that during the month. And that way she doesn't have to feel guilty when she's ignoring something else at home because she's come. This is her dedicated space and time to do this. And she said she really likes that aspect. All right, so starting a handicraft circle at my library, PFPL, this sort of had been something I'd been toying around with for a while because we had patrons that were requesting more programs about crafting that were not specifically for little kids. And we were offering some things, but I thought that this would be a fairly simple one to try out. Very low cost. As I said, we're not buying any materials. We weren't buying hooks. We weren't buying yarn. We just basically needed space in the building, chairs, and staff time. So this started off as a one-off program in March 2023 on a Wednesday mid-morning. I picked a time where we didn't have anything else going on and I was going to be in the building. To promote this, I created a National Crafting Month display, which is the picture that you see on the right there in the lobby. Everything that is in the case is all stuff I have made. There's some knitting, some crochet, there's some I don't think there's any latch hook in that particular display. And then on the second row towards the right, that sign that has the green stripe on it, that was the flyer for this new handicraft circle we were having. So that was nice visual advertising. That case is in our lobby. Pretty much anyone who comes into the building walks past it. So a lot of people did see it. And so that was a nice passive way to promote. We also advertise through our social media. We have Facebook and Instagram. We have a Twitter. We don't really, or sorry, X. We don't use it very much because basically we only follow other libraries and other libraries follow us. We don't have many public members interacting with us that way. And we also put it on the website and our email newsletter. And then there was a few flyers we posted around town, like local senior center, stuff like that. And then in terms of setup, I opted to do this out in the public library area as opposed to our programming room. That room is always a lot colder than everywhere else in the building, which I like, but not necessarily for the people who are going to come to this. We have hard plastic chairs that are not very comfortable. They're not very conducive to sitting for a long time. So I went out to our magazine area where there are comfier padded chairs and sort of arranged them in a loose circle. And I put out a sign-in sheet. And for a program for adults during the day, I think we had 8 or 9 people show up the first time, which was pretty good for a program that we'd never tried before. And pretty much the feedback from the first session was, this is great. Please also do this at night. So this sort of one-off program turned into a twice monthly program. I work Monday night, so I went with the first Monday at 6 and then the third Wednesday at 10:30 in the morning. To the right there, that's a larger size of the flyer that was in the display case photo. And so I sort of plotted out for this was from the fall session of last year. So we basically had from September through December all marked out. People could put it on their calendar. We continue to promote via word of mouth, social media, the website, email, newsletter. What was nice about having the sign-in sheet, it was easier to track to see how many people had come, and I could also then send out an email reminder to say, hey, there's another one of these coming up. If you would like to share the flyer with anyone who would be interested, please do that. And then 2 constant reminders that I did pretty much talk to everyone about as I was talking about this, that this is open to all ages. By no means is knitting or crocheting, needlework, anything like that. It's not a white old lady thing. There are people who knit, crochet, any sort of handicraft stuff of all ages. Granted, doing this on a Wednesday morning at 10:30 in the morning, you're likely not going to have school children because they're at school. So you will generally have older people, which is part of the reason why I picked a mid-morning weekday, because I figured senior citizens would be the most likely group to come to this. And that was the greatest percentage, but not necessarily at the one at night. We have had some younger people come at night. And I had mentioned this earlier, but all skill levels are welcome, but this is not an instructional class. That's in the sort of light green bubble at the bottom. We have had few people show up without anything, and they just sort of expect that someone's going to hand them yarn and crochet hook and like start showing them how to do things. how I have taken care of that the few times it's happened. I've had some other sort of crafty projects if someone would like to stay and do something like that. But I just explained to them, if you're interested, here are some resources for how you can learn how to do that. I've toyed around with the idea of having a class, but I have not done that yet. Okay. So then things to keep in mind, knowing your library and your community. So what kind of community do you have? Who is this type of program going to appeal to? Is it strictly a senior citizen thing? Are these millennials who work 9 to 5? Are they the type of people that would be coming in for this? Is this something you could market to the homeschooling families in town that are looking for something else to do during the day? And then when are they willing to come out? Weekday mornings, evenings, the weekend? Or would your community prefer class, where a skill is actually taught over an open circle, where the expectation is that you're going to bring your own knowledge and a project. And I sort of tested out that latter idea during summer readings 2023 program. The theme was community, and I thought that this would be a good thing to try. So we did a weaving class, and we also did like a pet toys made out of fleece and catnip class as well, which were both pretty well attended. And I did poll people who showed up. The picture there is of my daughter Iris, and she's doing different patterns with paper weaving, and it was a lot of fun. But all the people who showed up to that said that they were really not necessarily interested in coming to an open circle like that. They liked specific projects. So we do still have Handicraft Circle. I was telling Stephanie yesterday when we touched base that attendance has dropped. So for the next couple of months, we're putting it on hiatus while I evaluate how I would like to going forward. I don't know if I'm going to poll sort of the community and say, hey, when would be a good time to do this? Or if it would make more sense to sort of try another day of the week, or maybe try a weekend session, maybe Sunday afternoon. We all work in libraries. We know that everyone has 50 million different things going on, and there's no real good time, unfortunately. But, we do our best. And I know the people who show up always enjoy it. And so there's also a couple of resources here. The flyer with the green stripe, there's a view link to that if you'd like to make a copy or try something like that. I designed it via Canva. I love Canva. The knitting and activism article is also linked here. And there's also a book here that's available through the Internet Archive about the social history of American knitting. It also talks about activism as well. So that is it. I think I probably went under 20 minutes. I hope that's not a problem, Stephanie. And I think while I was presenting, I could not see the chat. So is there anything that I missed? Let me go see if I can go in and look at that.
No, that was great, Heather. I really appreciated your presentation too. And if anyone has any questions or comments or feedback for Heather, feel free to unmute yourself or put anything in the chat. And it's very, very informal here. And please feel free to share your experiences with like craft circles as well when we catch up.
Please do.
And look at Lena's comment. But she mentioned pet toys for summer reading crafting, which reminded her that they offer the same cat toy making program and donated the toys to a local animal shelter, which is awesome too.
Yeah.
And gave a 30-minute volunteer service certificate to children and teens who attended. I love that idea.
Yeah. We donated our toys too. We encouraged people to make one for their pets and then one to give to. We gave to a couple of different shelters. So I like that. And that's very kind of you to say, Melissa. Yeah, I kept it general and rather than just crochet or knitting, because they said people do things other than that. And, the idea of working with your hands, if someone showed up and wanted to build Lego and they brought Lego with them, I would not say no. Like you're making art, you're doing something. And it's fun. It's as I said, the woman who showed up with Pearl, I've known this woman for several years. She's involved with the Friends of the Library. I had no idea until she bought this big plastic box with her with all these different implements. And I was like, Doris, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, I'm stringing pearls. And I was like, that's a thing. Well, yeah, I guess it's a thing you can do, but I had never, we've all learned a lot from each other as we've been doing this. And it's been a lot of fun. I will also put my contact info if anyone has any follow-up questions in the chat. I also would be fine with sharing this presentation with Stephanie to email out to everybody as well. I can do that afterwards.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. I appreciate you putting your information in the chat. I'm looking at Melena's comment. Oh, I like how they have a crafternoon at Highland Park. That's a really cool name too. I like really catchy names.
I like that.
Which is very similar. Yeah, I want to do one for teens, a teen one this year, an adventure into new crafts type of thing. That'd be really, really fun.
Yeah, that's neat. Yeah, when in doubt, why not craft?
Right, yeah, exactly. So does anyone, oh, go ahead, Heather.
One thing I did not end up putting in this presentation, but I because I didn't want to go over and then I talked fast, so then I went way under. But one of the things that when I was researching, looking at this, that there is a very long history of activism being related to these knitting sewing circles. And so there are a variety of different ways you could spin this, something like this out. And that really would depend on the people who are involved in it. Like a lot of library programs, they are what you make of them. And sometimes a program goes in a different direction than you initially think it is going to, simply because of who has shown up and who has taken an interest and who has sort of taken the ball and run with it. And I know there are other libraries that have done similar programs like this that have sort of turned into making baby blankets to donate to the local hospital, or making blankets to send overseas to war zones, or and I cannot think of which library it is, but a couple of years ago I went to something for NJLA, and a woman presented in North Jersey. They made roll-up blankets or sleeping pads for people who are experiencing homelessness out of plastic bags. And that was a really cool thing that I would love to do in my community. I don't think there's enough steady interest to sustain something like that, because I think she said it was something like 150 plastic shopping bags were needed to do one. And I'm like, that's great. But with the bag ban in New Jersey, I don't know if that's feasible anymore. But there are a lot of different directions. I would love to yarn bomb my town and just sort of cover all of the streets in our main drag with, yarn over cover of darkness one night. But, maybe at some point in the future. Oh, I see Laura puts in the chat.
Yeah, I want to see Lena's question about the physical space where you host a program. Do you set up tables and chairs in a circle? That's a good question too.
That is a very good question. So my library is currently basically one big room, and then we have one program room off to the side. In what we call our magazine area, it's where like the periodicals are. And there's a variety of sort of padded chairs that are super, super old, but they're, and therefore lived in and very comfortable. And I just sort of move the 10 or 15 of them in like a loose circle, because sometimes we don't have that many people show up. In which case, if someone comes over and wants to read the newspaper, I don't want them to feel like they're required to participate in this. But it's very, very loose, and that gives people the freedom to say like, oh, I want to move closer to you to see what you're doing. And sometimes that sort of loose circle shifts into a different shape, and that's, that's fine. But I like doing it out in the public area, because then that brings people who are curious, like, what are you doing over here? And maybe I'll come next month and stuff like that. Whereas it's a little more difficult to do that if you're closed off in the program room on the other side of the building that you can only get to if you go through the doors, type of thing. And that also makes it more homier and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, thanks for answering that. I have that same question too. And for those who recently joined, we're just talking about where we craft in our library. So I'm interested in hearing from others about if you have a set room for it, if you're just, kind of making use of the space, and how you are making use of the space too. I'm also looking at Jen's comment in the chat about a local knitting group that in Morristown that yarn bombed rainbows, etc. for Pride Month a few years ago. I like that idea too. It's coming up, so it's a great opportunity for crafting of all types.
Yep. Yeah, and you never know when you put something out there, what response you might get for something. I go back to the Pro Lady again. I said, I didn't know that was a thing until, she showed up, and a couple of people who have come to this program have expressed interest in learning how to do that. I don't know if those connections have been made and she's actually done that. A guy who comes, he unfortunately used to come to the one in the morning, but now he only comes to one in the afternoon, or the one in the evening, because he's a college professor and his schedule changes, semester to semester. And he brings his various knitting machines. He sort of collects knitting machines. And that's always cool to see, to make like a sleeve of something in like a minute and a half, as opposed to, however long it would take you to actually knit it by hand. It's interesting exposure to see who comes to things. And we have people outside of the township that this library serves come because their local library doesn't have anything, or the time that their local library has something similar, it's not a time convenient to them. So I'm one to always try something new. And, if someone comes to me and says, I would like to do this, it's like, well, let's see how we can make that happen. And it's kind of nice working in a library setting, stuff that you yourself are interested in, you often have the opportunity to be able to share that in one way or another. And when we were talking about doing more crafting programs for older tweens through adults, I was like, well, I crochet, we could do something like that. And that sort of turned into this thing that about a year later, we're still doing in some capacity.
That's great. Yeah, thank you for sharing that too. And I'm wondering about what timing works best for other people here as well, in terms of their crafternoons or any of their crafting groups.
Yeah.
So anyone is welcome to share also, or unmute yourself or put anything in the chat.
So at Piscataway, we actually have a lot of people who work from home and will take a break during the day to come here to, come to a daytime meeting, and they're, younger millennials and people who you wouldn't think would be at the library at 11 o'clock on a Thursday, but they are. So that's been all times of the day have been working for us for all age groups, really. So a lot of, with just more flexible schedules.
Anyone else is welcome to share too, or ask any questions for Heather about crafting, or just about her presentation in general. Yes, and Melissa has a good point, and it's free, which is awesome.
Free is good.
Yes. I'm just making sure I don't miss anything in the chat too. And for those who recently joined, we will be sharing Heather's slides with everyone afterwards as well.
Okay, so Jen, I see put in the chat, do you find that participants teach each other? I have found that happens occasionally. Usually, interestingly enough, it is people who are working with the same type of crafting, like two knitters will say like, oh, I'm doing this. Oh, how are you doing that? You're purling. Oh, you're not purling. You're missing. Like, how are you doing that? I haven't found too much like crochet sewing knitters. I worked in a craft store when I was in high school, which is how I learned how to crochet. And I have heard anecdotally people who learn how to crochet first prefer to crochet over knitting, and people who learn how to knit sort of say, how can you only do this with one hook? And I learned how to crochet first. So to me, knitting is kind of puzzling. Although logically it sort of works better because crocheting is literally just a series of knots, whereas you're actually weaving when you're knitting. So it is interesting to see that cross-pollination between, but occasionally they do show each other things, but mostly people have brought their own projects that they are working on. But it's cool to be able to say like, hey, I'm working on this sweater. And then next month, hey, I have, the neck and one of the shoulders done. And then a couple months later, oh, I'm fine, putting on the sequins for the eyes of the owl that I put all over the sweater. And then next month they wear it. So that is kind of cool to see how things progress in that fashion, meeting every month or month and a half, depending on how often you run these. And we have had people, we have a stay-at-home mom for a while who was coming. Unfortunately, they moved out of the area, I believe. But she said that she liked the fact that smack dab in the middle of the month, she had an hour she could come to the library and not feel guilty that she wasn't doing the dishes or doing the wash or, you know, keeping an ear out for the phone or making dinner. Like, this was her time dedicated to work on whatever project she was working on. And people like that space to be able to just sort of pause and work on something. And then when you're done, you can say, like, I actually did something. There's something physically, tangibly in your hands. And that's a powerful thing.
Yeah, no, I love that, Heather, especially like making something that you can physically see and touch too. I'm looking at Lena's next comment about what are some of the ways to publicize your handicraft events? That was a question I was going to have as well. They generally use a printed monthly paper calendar in-house. Their in-house whiteboards for announcements, library website, online calendar, and Instagram, but it has limited reach, which I agree. Does anyone, and Heather included, have a great Canva announcement they could share? I agree, Lena, about Canva. I love it too, but there's a lot there and it can be overwhelming. So
When you
completely
say
agree.
a great Canva announcement, do you mean like a flyer or actual, like, hey, we're having this really cool thing, more like a press release? I'm not sure what you're, oh, a flyer. Okay. So in the presentation that I just gave, there is a resource slide in there. And in that, I can just drop that in the, not there. I will drop in the chat a view link where you can make a copy of the flyer that I used, that I designed via Canva. I used a template, and it basically lists the basics of what it is, contact, if you have any questions, and what it is and what it isn't. So hopefully this works. I did test it. Sometimes you can never tell with Canva because it automatically signs you in. So let's see. That's there. Hope someone let me know if that does not work. But that's the one that I've used, and I basically just update the dates. I usually do it a couple months at a time. And that way I'm not recreating a flyer. Oh, awesome. Thank you. I'm not recreating a flyer every single month. And so I usually do it with like the seasons or every 6 months or something like that. And you know, that works. And as I said, Canva is awesome. But yes, I agree that it's sometimes there's just too many options.
Yeah, no, this flyer is great, Heather. And like, wait, is it Lana or Lana? Am I pronouncing your name right? I wanted to make sure I was pronouncing it right. So it might be Lana. So I hope that helps. Okay, got it. Yes, awesome. Thank you. Okay, so Lana, sorry about that earlier. But you know, this flyer is great, Heather. I'm going to use this one too. Because I
Please
also
do.
this template, but I also really, really like this.
Yeah. I'm big on green if you can't already tell. But yes,
Great
no, and
color
it's
too.
well,
Yeah.
Yep. Any other questions about anything or anything else you would like to share? Has anyone tried doing something similar to this, but making it explicitly a teaching session, like come learn how to crochet? And if so, I'd be curious to hear how that's gone, because I've done that with teens at a library that I previously had worked at. I helped one of the other librarians when I was a library assistant. And then I also helped one of the adult librarians when they did it for adults as well. And it was a very interesting experience. Very, very different than this type of setting of just sort of having it be open and you bring your project and stuff like that. But I'm curious as to how anybody else, what experience you've had with that.
Yeah, I'm curious as well. Oh, and Jen says their teen librarian is planning to do this in May, a series of crochet sessions that build on one another to a final project. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I definitely would like to do something like that at some point.
Yeah, and Jen, please report back to let us know how that goes too. Yeah, I'm also curious if anyone has similar to what Jen was saying, experiences on one type of like handicraft. So like crochet, knitting, etc. And like what is more popular, what gets more engagement. So I'm kind of curious about that as well. Okay, let me look at Lana's next comment. Their branch manager, former teen librarian, partners with their current teen librarian teaches, that's really awesome too. It is challenging to teach new crocheters. Yeah, because like I can crochet, but teaching it is very different than actually doing it yourself. It does help to have multiple hosts if
Mhm.
possible.
It does. And I'm a lefty.
Oh,
So the
see,
person who taught me how to crochet was someone that I worked with at this craft store in high school, and we've stayed friends, but she taught me how to do it right-handed because she was right-handed, and it hurt to do. And after about 6 months, I was like, the heck with this. Why am I doing this? And a couple of years later, I was in college and saw on YouTube a recommendation to learn, basically sit across from someone and mirror what they were doing. And that was like, an epiphany moment, quote unquote. And like, it was like, oh, it did not hurt when I'm doing it with my dominant hand. And so, there's that factor as well. So it was always useful that I was like the second person when I was helping with those sessions, because someone would be like, I can't do this. And we're like, I understand why. Let's try it this way. And yeah, it is difficult unless you're teaching all brand new people who have absolutely no experience. If you have someone who knows a little bit of what they're doing, they will get bored very easily. And then other people who are brand new are like, what do you mean I have to make a chain stitch? Why do I have to make 110 of these? And unfortunately, things like crochet, knitting, sewing, they are things that you really have to invest often a lot of time in, depending on the project. Like if you want to make a shirt, cool, that's great. But you're going to have a very long chain stitch, and then it's going to take a while before you see any progress. And it's something you really have to stick with. And to Jill's comment about having volunteers come in and teach crochet, I would love to do that. I have not found anyone yet who will volunteer their time to do that. We have reached out to like the local sewing stores, not like Joann's or Michael's, but like more local based one-off, mom and pop type shops. And people are willing to come if, we pay them as an outside performer, which of course, it's their job. And obviously I'd like to pay people for their time. Often it ends up being outside of our price range at this point. So we're always on the lookout for people to volunteer their time. Like I would be happy to do it, but it's a time commitment. And I wouldn't want to just do it as a one-off. I would want to follow up and, have some sort of project. And so, we try to do other smaller things like the paper weaving, introducing the concept and the idea that if you are interested in that then you will possibly find out and try doing it with yarn, although it's slightly different, even if it's a similar concept.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your experiences, Heather. I'm kind of curious if anyone else besides Jill has volunteers come in and teach. I know that can be difficult to find people to come in, and yeah, Heather, as you said, like budget is always an issue for many of us. He offered a loop troop teaching crochet class at their other tiny branch, but no one attended. I'm so sorry to hear that. Yeah, I feel like you never know if it's going to be like Heather was saying, a lot of people or no one attending. So okay. Lana loves the idea of having a non-teaching social crafting opportunity like a handicraft circle, which I do too. She noticed that in a children's department, families enjoy programs and then stay to play and socialize. I agree that's more popular now than before. And this is a great opportunity for that as well.
I like the idea of calling something Loop Troop. I will say,
I do, yeah.
Someone in my building really, really, really wanted me to call Handicraft Circle Heather's Happy Hookers, which I would have been okay with. But the nice little old ladies, senior citizens, who were the first couple of people to attend these sessions, I didn't want them to not come because of the name. And so if we restart this, especially if I could get some younger people involved, I'd be happy to have the Happy Hookers. I think that would be great. I didn't know how LibraryLinkNJ felt with profanity, so I did not include in the presentation, but one of the more popular knitting circle things, her name is Debbie. I can't think what her last name is. She's the Stitch and Bitch lady. She's written several books about knitting circles, and she did, it might have even been called the Happy Hooker. There was like a crochet book as well. And she started an organization to have Stitch and Bitch, circles all over the country. And I think they've gone global at this point. And so, I said I'd be fine with that, but I did not want to alienate what I thought would be my target audience at the begin with. But yeah, yes, I can say yes. Loop Troop, I kind of like that. So we went with Handicraft Circle, but yeah, Heather's Happy Hookers, that was one of the suggestions at one point.
That is funny though. That would I'd be curious about it. But I also like Loop Troop. That is so fun.
To Melissa's point about hard to get men in, I do find that hilarious because the professor friend that I mentioned who has come, he's male. And we have had a couple of men come in. It has been mostly older Caucasian women, but not exclusively. So who knows? All right, I'm liking the support for happy hookers. Maybe I will have to rebrand. I'll have to talk to my director about that. I don't know how she would feel about that, but we'll see.
Yeah, keep me posted.
We'll do.
Yeah. I still like Crafternoon too, just as like a
Mhm.
fun play on words also. I like all these suggestions.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's all great. Kind of curious if other people have creative names for how they call their crafting programs.
There's got to be a good pun one out there somewhere.
That's what I was thinking. There has to be. I was gonna ask Jenny. I know she has a lot of people coming to there, so I'm kind of curious how they advertise it. Not to put you on the spot, Jenny. I'm sorry.
I don't call anything cute anymore. I don't know. We just call it what it is. And people come. So, but I know that I'm in, a special situation. So, yeah, I know Crafternoon has been successful, but we tried to use Crafternoon just for specific groups. So that way it always is affiliated with like a certain age group instead of, just cuts down on confusion. So, because we do have, we have a large building and a large population. So, we have an upcoming program, our Community Arts Day coming up in May. That is actually an adult focused event, and we're having a lot of people coming who are like, oh, but I'm a grown up, I can't come to this. I'm like, no, this is for you. Like this is not a children's event. Please leave your children home and please come to this event by yourself. So
that is one of the tough things when I was trying to come up with
Mhm.
advertising for this, that I wanted it to be open to all ages, but also make it clear that it wasn't for little kids, which
Mhm.
is why in the flyer there's no children on the flyer. I think it's just hands. I used all like Canva, or I think they might have used images from Pixabay, like free open source, type of stuff. And I wanted to focus more on the actual pieces that people could possibly create, as opposed to having, I feel like a lot of, people look at a flyer and form a decision within, I think it's like 3.2 seconds or something like that. And if there's a kid on it, people are going to assume it's for children, even if it is an all ages thing. So I had made that conscious decision to not make it look like it was something for kids. Although if a kid shows up and is a wizard at crochet or knitting or whatever, cool, awesome, great. You're welcome to come. But it is, and I'm the youth services person. This happens to be a program that mostly adults attend. But our adult services staff have that difficulty in, trying to accurately advertise to people, because that is something that we were like, oh, it must be for kids. And it's like, no, this is for adults. This is specifically for adults. I am curious, Susie, if you're able to unmute your Crafter Dark. Is that like a 6 o'clock on like a weeknight thing? Or is that like a later in the evening thing? I'm just curious as to how you have done that.
So, our friends of the library, we had a very vocal friend that was like, oh, I want to attend your programs, but I work during the day. So how am I going to attend? So what we do is we offer a Crafternoon, which happens from 1 to 2:30. Then the Crafter Dark is scheduled during a weeknight, mostly on Wednesdays. From 6 to 7:30. And sometimes we've had weather issues during the day with that, like one time that it really accumulated snow for, a small amount. So we ended up getting like 8 people at the daytime program. And then the evening program, which was held the week after, we ended up getting something like 12. So it's just, I've only done this a couple times, and with regard to the Crafter Dark program, but people, you see a lot of new faces that are getting opportunities, whereas with Crafternoon programs, sometimes you see the same group of ladies. We had a gentleman come to our Crafter Dark program we did for the Valentine's Day cards, and he said that he was going to use his Valentine's Day cards to get him some ladies. So, you know, that was
Very nice.
fun. So I was like, oh, we have a guy. I was so excited. But we also just wrapped up our Eclipse programming, and we got on the news for our Eclipse t-shirts, which was a lot of fun. And we had a very diverse group that came to that, which was really nice, because we're also looking for not only including, you know, male and females, but a diverse audience. So, you know, offering these programs at different times of the day, you see different people, which, you know, is a good thing for inclusion and diversity.
I love the idea of craft or dark.
Yeah, I want to use that.
Yeah.
Maybe for teens and not for adults, but because I'm, as I said, I'm the youth services person, but I do like the play on words like that.
I think that'd be a great idea for teens too. I like your idea that you were talking about, Cecily, for the insiders for I like that. Is that still in the progress? Like a social hour for people with disabilities?
Yes, so I was told to schedule a program for May. We actually got a lot of activity bags. One is an art kit, one is a music kit, another is a fashion kit. And these are, they have like tiny curriculums for each other, for each individual bag. The Insiders is a name I came up with, and my director was like, or my supervisor was like, okay, but we need to make sure that we define which audience this is for, because the Insiders could mean a lot of things to a lot of people. But we are just trying to focus our developmentally delayed social hour on adults with developmental disabilities, so 18 to 21 range, 21 on. I actually had a maid audience working with a guy named Robert from OTC. And also I was late. I apologize coming to this program, because I saw that we had a group from the ARC come. So I wanted to go out and say, hey, we're doing this program for developmentally delayed clients, you know. And she's like, oh yeah, sign me up. You know, she's like, my supervisor's going to really love this. So really, it's a work in progress. But it also, you know, it kind of came with its own system. I'm just trying to tweak it a little bit for our soft launch, which is going to be on May 24th. And I look to use this first program as a learning tool for how to make the others better. I limited it to only 10 students or clients with their helpers. And today I actually got to see a group from the ARC. I gave them coloring pages because they just looked really bored sitting there doing, you know, nothing. So, you know, it's nice to be given these different opportunities to serve our community, because developmentally delayed are also part of our community that we try to service.
That's great. Thank you for sharing too.
I wanted to go back to what Amy said a couple of minutes ago about asking if anyone's done an adult, oops, sorry, hold on, there's chat and it disappeared, about doing an adult craft where the craft needs to be baked afterwards and picked up by attendees later. And how did that go? And was anyone disappointed? I myself have never run any programs like this, but my director does a maker camp in the summer, which is not for kids. It's not for adults. It is for kids and up through like the tween age. And she has done several different projects that have involved like oven baked clay, or she did making like a applesauce cinnamon ornament thing around Christmas that was supposed to be baked as well. Depending on the project and how it will travel, sometimes she has them she'll take them home with her because we don't have an oven in the library. And she'll just say, like, you do have to come back and pick them up. She's usually done that in the context of, this is part of a series. So if week one you do this, week two, you're coming back anyway, so you can just take it home the next week. I don't know if adults would be more disappointed. I mean, I would hope that if they came once, they'd be happy to come back again.
Mhm.
But that is an interesting question. I don't know if anyone else has had any experience with that.
Yeah, not completely the same, but for perler bead projects, which need to be ironed, sometimes people have been, usually like younger kids have been upset they can't take it home right away. They can take it, you know, pick it up the next day. But that's usually more not adults though. So that's kind of perler beads are a little bit different than after like baking a food or anything. But I feel like those are having a resurgence right now. So that was the first thing I thought of.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm catching up on the comments too. Lana, I like your similar program about sensory bags designed for libraries. That's a really cool picture. It is awesome. I appreciate when people share pictures in a chat too. So thank you for that. Jenny says, Amy, they have done programs with later pickup times and it has been successful. Just let them know what the program when a pickup time will be. That's a great idea. Maker Camp sounds great. Okay, Maker Camp is once a week throughout summer reading. Okay, I was wondering about
Yeah.
that one too, Heather.
Yes, it is my director's baby.
Yeah.
She fully admits that she usually runs it for like 2nd grade up through like 8th grade, and occasionally she'll do like a one-off special program for teens, depending on the year. And in the past, it was our registration. You registered for the camp, and it was not a full day or even a half day. It was usually like an hour and a half to 2 hours. And if you wanted, you could bring lunch at the end because it ended right around lunchtime. This past year, she did do registration for individual weeks and found that a lot of people registered for everything and then didn't come to anything. And staff spent a lot of time contacting people midway through because registration had filled up, but we weren't getting people coming in. So she hasn't made up her mind yet, but I think she might end up not having registration this time around and just sort of have projects for X number of kids. And, you know, if you show up a half an hour late and there's no spot left, you know, show up earlier next week. My library in general has really gotten away from registration for the most part, simply because we just have a community that as soon as things get released, we'll register for everything. And then even though they get a reminder in the email or sometimes they get a call, they often just don't show up. And we recognize that, you know, I'm a parent as well. I've got 50 million different things going on. You know, Google Calendar rules my life. But, you know, sometimes you miss things. But when you consistently don't show up week after week after week to things, we're trying to figure out the best way to address that because we don't want to alienate patrons. Which is why something like Handicraft Circle, which is totally open, does not require registration. If 50 people show up, cool. If 5 people show up, that's fine. If you tell me you're coming and then you don't, it's not like I've prepared, you know, I've not spent hours preparing craft material and stuff for you. Like this is a nice, low stakes, low, easy setup, 0 cost. It just takes, you know, your time and effort to run.
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that, Heather, because I think registration is always a huge issue for many of us. If you have any other questions for Heather, you're also welcome to share those as well in our final minutes here.
And for those of us that joined, I will also drop my contact information out, and I am going to share the slide deck with Stephanie. You are welcome to contact me at any point. I'd be happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability. By no means am I the expert, but I will do my best. And if I do not know the answer, I will do my best to try to point you in the correct direction, as us information professionals do.
Awesome. Yeah, that's always my response too. It's like, if I don't know the answer, I will help you find someone who does.
And thank you very much, LibraryLinkNJ, for asking me to do this. It's nice to see so many people show up. Sometimes you go into a virtual presentation or a presentation like this and nobody shows up and it's just you and the presenter and you talk anyway, but it's always nice to have a back and forth conversation and to see many of you whose names I recognize and people that I know. It's very nice to see you all. I hope to see you in person at some point and not just have you be tiny little, you know, squares on my screen.
Yeah, NJLA for many of you. Yeah, and for you, Heather, too. Awesome.
I'm sorry, I missed that. What did you say?
Oh, so hopefully at NJLA.
Oh,
see you
yes.
soon. Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yep.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Yes,
Yes.
definitely see me in person as well at NJLA.
Yes,
I'll be at the
I will be
LibraryLink
there.
booth most of the time.
Yep.
Yes, and Heather, this was great too. So
Okay,
thank you for your
awesome. Yeah.
presentation.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. This was great. I would happily do this again.
Yeah, if you have any questions, I'm going to share Heather's info and slides afterwards. So please feel free to reach out to her as well. I'm just happy to answer any questions about you may have about crafts. And yeah, we hope to see you again soon. So thanks again, Heather.
You are welcome.